Years ago, you may recall that D.K. Lee's theme for the year was emphasizing child mortality, infant and child mortality. Gender equality. You can say all the work is done by the women. If we want to liberate the women, if we want to enable the women to play the meaningful role in society, then we have to free them from this drudgery. This is what Rotary is doing, as you'll see in a few minutes. But absolutely essential that it be a level playing field. And that, of course, ties in with the education of the girls as well. Where the girls are not being educated because of lack of water and sanitation in the schools, and very clearly we have this disparity in society. It's very, very difficult to think of improving life and livelihood in a society where there is a lack of education and where there is that inequality in the gender. And poverty and hunger goes without saying. In some parts of the world where water is not available, the people are buying it from tank trucks that come around. The people who are buying the tank trucks are often paying 10 times more than the rich people who are connected to a water system. Robin Hood in reverse, taking from the poor to support the rich. In some places we'll find, and where they're buying water from the tank truck, people are spending, or families are spending up to 25% of their income on buying water. Water is a lot more expensive than oil for those people, and yet it is far more fundamental to a successful, wholesome life. So however you look at it, every aspect of human development, water and sanitation play a key role. Without it, it is very difficult to envisage any society moving forward. In the year 2000, all the countries of the United Nations came together to address the human condition. What can we do to improve the quality of life, particularly in the developing world? They talked about education, they talked about literacy, they talked about many, many other things. There was only one thing they agreed on, goal number 7, unanimous agreement, was on water. And the goal was, by the year 2015, to reduce by 50% the proportion that don't have access to safe water. Now, the numbers are mind-boggling, and I have difficulty with millions. I know there are some people in this room who used to deal with big numbers like that. I'm a poor immigrant from Yorkshire, came over the county with 50 pounds, billions, bottle am I. So I tried to convert this into numbers which I and my wife can understand. To achieve that goal, it means that every day we need to bring an additional 250,000 people onto water access. 250,000 people today. Another 250,000 tomorrow. 250,000 the day after. That is a measure of the challenge we're facing. It's a huge issue. That's what that 50% means. Now, where water is concerned, and I referred earlier to the fact that we've made progress, we are making progress in Asia. We are making progress in Latin America, but we're not making progress in Africa. We're backsliding. And the reason in part is because of the civil strife. Give you an example from Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire. In the year 2004, the access to water was enjoyed by about 82% of the population. Then they had the Civil War, and access dropped to 67%. And that's where it was when I was over there just before this current insurrection. And I'm sure, once again, the result of the conflict will be destruction of various water services, pipelines, pumping stations, and so forth. And even Kenya, which is known as a peaceful country, had strife after the last election. People were killing each other, and in turn undermining the water and sanitation facilities in parts of the country. So Africa is the big challenge. So when any Rotarians or others say, Denham, where should we start? I say, well, if you don't have a preferred country or continent to start with, then think about sub-Saharan Africa. However, having said that, if any of you have relationships, associations with Rotarians in any other part of the world, Asia, Latin America, or including India, of course, the Philippines, Indonesia, by all means help them, because there's a desperate need there. In India, total population of the country about 1.2 billion. 600 million people don't have access to safe sanitation. 600 million, almost 50% of the country. Staggering statistics. And interestingly enough, India is potentially a very rich country. Look at it on the economic growth scales and being compared with China in many respects. But the need is great. Interestingly enough, billions of dollars have been spent. And this has to be a concern to us in Rotary. Why is it that so much has been done? Why is it so much has been spent? Why have so many hours been spent on this with so few results? Many of you read the Rotarian magazine. Read other publications, The Economist, for example, International Herald Tribune, many other papers that talk about water. You've probably been solicited by organizations such as World Vision, drilling wells everywhere, large numbers of wells, but they're not sustainable. In many cases, we'll just go on to that in the next slide. Rainwater harvesting. And I understand you can't do that in this state, which I was told about on Monday this week. The rain belongs to not you, even though you can get... this boggled the mind. I mentioned this to a Rotary Club in Toronto 2 days ago, and they just couldn't believe that you didn't have entitlement to rain. At least in Africa, people can own the rain that falls on their lot, so maybe we can learn a thing or two. But rainwater harvesting is potentially the most sustainable of all the technologies that can be used. You can do it at the household level, catching the rain on eaves trough and a downspout into a cistern, which you'll see a picture shortly. Or in a larger scale, you can contour the ground so that when the rain falls, it's directed to a pond which has been done. That's another possibility. But rainwater harvesting is one of the few sustainable possibilities. Thousands and millions of dollars spent on filtration of various kinds. Dams and pipelines. I'm told that the longest dam in the world was built by Rotarians, 16 kilometers long. It's only about that high. Check dam in some rural area in India. It's effective. And we spend a lot of money on latrines and toilets. And yet those statistics which I showed you earlier still obtain. Sanitation worse than it used to be. Water, almost 1 billion people still without safe access, despite everything that has been done. Why is it? 70% of the projects fail. Now, these are numbers which UNICEF, Clarissa Brocklehurst, spoke to our Rotary Water Conference last year. She gave the latest information. The average is 70%. In some countries it's more than that. In some countries it's fewer than that. There is a terrible failure rate. Why? And this is where we need to examine ourselves and our motives when we embark on a water project. So often, we do what we want to do. We're masters of technology. The technology we have will solve every water problem. But the trouble is, those poor people in Africa don't know how to service a submersible pump when it's brought up. They don't know whether there's a supply chain for the spare parts, the glands, the seals, and what have you. In some cases, they don't even know how to service it. I was in a rural area in Ivory Coast about 2 months ago, and there was something needed fixing. So I said to somebody, can you give me a screwdriver? What's a screwdriver? Think of that cultural gap. And yet we, in North America particularly, it also happens in England, it happens in Europe and Australia, we will develop some technology and say, okay, this will solve the water problem in Ghana, and we'll send this device over there. And we're somewhat frustrated when we go over there a year later and find it sitting there collecting dust. Well, maybe it was the wrong voltage, or the wrong frequency. Or maybe it broke down and nobody knew how to fix it. And you know, this is not only a problem in Africa. We have to reflect that in our society, not everything goes according to plan. And I'm going to point out a situation in our own country. In Ontario,